power on.
Earth, 2019. Dominant species, human. Galactic potential rating, 0. Cultural affiliation, combination of government and global businesses, corporatism, legacy institution. Species still conservative, superstitious, and religious. Ecologically illiterate, largely unaware of cosmological foundation of love. Level of technological dependence is disturbingly higher than the galactic standard. Species distracted and behavior controlled by technology companies. System error. Advanced concepts detected beyond normal human levels. New galactic potential rating, over 9,000. Transmission type, podcast. Host, the man of tomorrow. Brian Sovryn. Source, Sovryn Tech.
One of the longest running tech shows in the world, and your weekly dose of sanity. Well, even though I sound insane half the time, but that's because, when you're considered insane in an insane world, clearly you're the sane one. Woo! And that's what you've got. And we have so much to talk about this week. I got a request, actually, to talk about some business going on with Poloniex. Boy, that's a name we haven't brought up in a good long while on here on Sovryn Tech, but we'll get into it. And of course, so much more. And we'll see everything that we can actually get into. But you are dealing with the best, because it is I, the Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, the man who's always wearing triple black, baby, and you know it. Ready to get into it this week. And, we got a hell of an opener to get into. That is a very interesting subject that, I don't think a lot of tech shows, because I check out the competition every once in a while, though I don't necessarily consider them competition, because when you're the podcast champion, what competition is there? Yeah, I mean, really, folks, how many of these people can actually sit down, just get behind a microphone? Hell, I could sit down and get behind the microphone. I set up show notes. I have all this stuff laid out and everything. I could just sit down. I mean, I don't have it that laid out, but I could just sit down and I could just start talking, and I could flap my yap for an hour and a half. Hell, I could do 2 hours like old school Sovryn Tech, and I guarantee you'd be entertained. Not to toot my own horn or anything, but you know what I mean? I mean, so many of these other people, everything's so heavily edited. Everything's like, I got to make sure I don't sound stupid and all blah, blah, blah. No, not here, baby. This is as raw and uncensored and, I like to think, pretty entertaining and unique as it gets, especially when it comes to tech, science, health, all the good stuff that we get to talk about on this show. Oh, man. In fact, something I did want to talk about. I don't think we'll get into it in this episode. There's that documentary, was it The Game Changers, that Arnold Schwarzenegger put together? It's on that cult network that the mindless go to. What's that called? Netflix, right. It's on there. Or that's where it happens to be an exclusive. But I checked this out, and wow, some fascinating really new science there. We'll get into that in the future, but if you follow me on Twitter at Sovryn Tech, SOVRYNTech.com, or not .com, that's my website. But if you go at Sovryn Tech on Twitter, you can see some of the stuff I've already shared about that. Because my mind was absolutely blown after watching that documentary. So do check that out. And maybe in the near future, we'll talk about it. But anyway, so to get into, like I said, a story that I don't feel like a whole lot of the rest of the tech world is really covering, but I think it's an important one, and it has very broad ramifications within its own more niche realm, but it also has broad ramifications, I think, across the well, shall we say, the interconnected landscape that we live in today. And we'll go ahead, we'll open this baby right up. I'm not going to talk about, there was the Google event. We're going to talk a little bit about the Google event during HackSec. But really, it's more about someone involved with Nest, which is owned by Google, or AlphaGoog, that is a little more interesting. But we're also opening up talking about old AlphaGoog because we're going to talk about YouTube. And YouTube, of course, is technically a separate company from Google. Like it is running completely on its own. And I think part of what's going on in the story we're going to cover here, which comes out of, just about a month ago, but within September 2019, it's going to take full effect on January 1st, 2020. I think I might point as to part of the reasons why YouTube has been spun out of Google. And I think a lot of that has to do with culpability and really liability to, well, I mean, I'll say it kind of out front, but we need to dig into the story. But liability around the fact that really YouTube, we're just mentioning Netflix, but really YouTube is very much the premier consumption platform for just about everything. I mean, from games to even podcasts that get posted on YouTube. Sovryn is not a part of that necessarily. I mean, I have some things up on my YouTube channel, and they're actually fairly popular as far as YouTube videos go. Some of them having well over 10,000 views, and so on. But, that's not like a place that I would dare hang my hat, and much of what we're going to describe is why. But yeah, so much YouTube has really become central. I mean, YouTube is basically the modern day NBC. In a very real way. And it's funny because I think people forget about YouTube as they don't think of it as one of the streaming services, right? Even though it very clearly is with YouTube TV and other things. And, premium or red, whatever they called that, even though I know that hasn't worked out as well for them. But, they're right up there with Hulu and Netflix and CBS All Access and Disney Plus, which is on its way. Anyway, let's get into the story here. And I'm going to be reading from The Verge, but this is something I think The Verge actually isn't covering the broad ramifications of what's going on here. So again, this specific story by Julia Alexander is from September 6, 2019, but we got a lot to break down with this. So here's the headline: complaint filed against a popular toy channel on YouTube could lead to big ad changes. And again, these ad changes will be happening January 1st, 2020. Now, a lot of what we're going to read here and what I'm going to hypothesize, and bring up is, there's a lot of speculation involved because we're not exactly sure, we as in the internet using public, we are not exactly sure how this is going to take shape. But there is a wild card in this, in that no matter what we do, either as, say, creators, consumers, take your pick of those that engage with YouTube, no matter what role you play in that, machine learning gets into the mix, and that's really the wild card. But we'll talk about that. Let's read on here. The line between an advertisement and entertaining content is blurry on YouTube, and a children's rights watchdog group is asking the FTC to step in. The group, Truth in Advertising, has filed a complaint with the FTC over one specific YouTube creator's channel, Ryan Toys Review. Hosted by 7-year-old Ryan Kaji, but run by his parents, of course. Stanley breaking in on that. The channel often finds Kaji playing with and unboxing toys. The complaint states that Kaji's parents didn't disclose paid sponsorships from companies like Chuck E. Cheese's and Hardee's. When the channel did properly disclose paid sponsorships, they were written or voiced in a way that is impossible for preschool children to understand. Quote, an adult might be able to tell when a kid influencer like Ryan is playing with one of his own products, end quote. Bonnie Patton, executive director at Truth in Advertising, told The Verge. Quote, the intended audience, which are preschoolers, has no idea that they're being pitched a commercial. The goal is for them to say, Mom, I want what Ryan has, end quote. Patton's main concern is that a disclaimer at the top of a description box on a YouTube video or a quick voiceover isn't enough for young children to understand this is a paid advertisement. The ethical quandary presented to creators like Kaji and his parents is a gray area that people have brought to YouTube's attention before. Creators have called out personalities like Jake Paul, who has mentioned on several occasions that his target audience is around 8 years old, for using sponsorships on his channel to sling controversial products, including a gambling-like loot box site. Now, I want to stop on this for a second, okay? We are very harsh on marketing and advertising on Sovryn Tech. It is, I would dare say, I mean, it's something that people don't recognize. There's more to the story. We're going to get to it. It's something people don't recognize, like how big of a problem it is in the world today. I mean, and you could kind of say that people are starting to get in on it, right? Like Mark Zuckerberg had to go speak in front of the U.S. Congress recently and basically said, well, we can't do anything about misinformation and ads and all this stuff. I mean, people are starting to pay attention to the problem of ads, particularly online. Okay, now, Sovryn Tech is also, after fashion, ad-sponsored. Okay, we have sponsorships. I have advertisers, and quite a few of them, actually. Okay, understand that there is a right way, and this is kind of what this truth in advertising is getting to. There is a right way to do advertising. There is an ethical way to do advertising, like I like to think we do on Sovryn Tech. I tell you when something is a Sovryn Tech sponsor. Okay, or even there's music breaks if it's to be like a pre-recorded ad or something like that where you will hear it. Okay, but then there's what you call shadow advertising. Okay, and this is an actual term. Now, understand, okay, I know this business very well. All right, I have been an ad executive. I do work, even to this day, in the realm of marketing and PR. All right, I am very, very familiar with the lingo, the terms, the strategies, all of these things. Okay, and I know how fucking ugly it can be. Don't confuse what I am going to say about this story as we read on. Don't confuse what I'm about to say is that somehow I'm saying advertising is unethical or blah, 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 blah. Absolutely not so. Just there is a right way to do it, and then there is a way to not do it. And this is referencing, I mean, we'll talk a little bit about the problem with the, like advertising, like on, what is it, Ryan Toys review, right? Yeah, Ryan Toys review. We'll talk a bit about that, but just don't confuse that I'm making some kind of blanket statement against this. Okay, what we want, the first step in having honest advertising, okay, is having honest companies. And when you engage in shadow advertising, it does raise into question the companies and then a whole lot of other things, which is what we're going to describe. So anyway, but let's keep going, because believe me, this has much more to do than just advertising. It's much bigger than that. Let's keep going. Truth in Advertising's complaint also brings up a related issue that the YouTube community has previously talked about: creators who plug their own merchandise and other products to young viewers. A 2018 investigation by YouTuber EEN of popular channel Nerd City discovered that nearly half the length of Paul's videos, and that's Jake Paul, are used to plug his own products, which he is trying to sell to young kids. It's why personalities like Ethan Klein, who hosts the popular H3 podcast, have referred to Paul's advertising methods as predatory. It's an issue that advocacy groups have been fighting YouTube on for years, but one crucial factor has changed this week. YouTube used to deflect criticisms by reiterating that its terms of service specifically state the site is not meant to be used by anyone under the age of 13. Instead, YouTube pointed to its official Kids app, the YouTube Kids app, still ain't breaking in on that, as a place where younger viewers could watch more curated videos. Even then, children's rights advocacy groups complained that YouTube was blatantly ignoring that many of its biggest channels were dedicated to young children, including toy unboxings and nursery rhyme compilations. The company also allowed advertisers to specifically target family content, which seemed to contradict YouTube's statement. So, this whole situation, which we're going to get into, okay, that YouTube Kids app is a central part of this conversation, all right? Particularly in that this really shows that the YouTube Kids app has failed, and that points at a very big problem. But let's keep reading. Now, after being given a record-breaking $170 million fine for allegedly violating the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, YouTube is changing things. So YouTube was fined $170 million. Chump change for them, sure, but now they're changing something. YouTube has to stop collecting data on videos that target minors, meaning those won't be able to run with targeted ads. Stanley breaking in, I think the lack of targeted ads is a great thing, but this gets broader. This is likely to push creators to take on more sponsorships from companies because they can no longer run a type of popular advertising on their channel. Creators who make videos that appeal to a younger audience or target children directly will also have to label their videos as such, and will lose some product abilities, including being able to send notifications. YouTube has also launched a dedicated kids version of the site that can be accessed online, which exists alongside the YouTube Kids app. Now, basically what they're saying here is that after this fine happened, and starting January 1st, 2020, okay, there's more to talk about here. But if your channel, for whatever reason, no matter how old the person is that's actually running the damn thing, or who you think your target audience is, if you fall under something that YouTube considers to be problematic or pointing at children, your website can no longer use targeted ads. Now, I don't like targeted ads. Okay, I think that's, again, targeted. Talk about anti-privacy. Targeted ads is like an incredible tracking tool used against you. And yes, it does get used against you by you pick your government alphabet soup organization. Okay, so targeted ads won't be possible, and that can certainly, let's be clear here. There are a lot of people who are running big businesses completely around YouTube. Like YouTube is their central focus. It's where they make their money. They might make a ton of ad revenue, and that ad revenue might be so large because perhaps of these targeted ads. Now, I grant you, and I've experimented with this many times over the years, I have never had a targeted ad that remotely got me to want to buy something or even spoke to me. Like, you know what I mean? As in, it was something that I would even be interested in. Now, granted, as I said at the top of the show, I'm insane. So I don't expect any algorithm or machine learning to be able to guess what I'm into, even though it's so abundantly fucking clear. I mean, it would be, how can it be that I'm not getting schlepped like Star Trek stuff or Star Wars stuff? And I never am. And that's so, I say those words so many times in a day, that Google Assistant, not that I have it turned on, but it listens anyway. Oh, well, maybe we'll talk about that during HackSec. It should be so easy to sell things to me, but it never works. So I don't know what that says about targeted ads, actually. I mean, maybe it only works on the dum-dums. I don't know, but regardless of that. Okay. But so there won't be targeted ads for these YouTube channels. Okay. They also, and this is a crazy one. You know how on YouTube, and even I do this on YouTube, you can subscribe but then you can set notifications, right? There's a little bell icon next to it, and you can get notified when a new video comes out. Channels that fall under these new regulations, we'll say, or new rules from YouTube, won't be allowed to notify their followers that a new video came out. And so you're just either going to have to constantly refresh that YouTube page every day to find out if a new video came out or what, but there won't be any notifications for that. So that's going on, as well. I mean, and this is, and you might already be getting where the problem comes in with this. Also, there's not going to be, I think, the comment section on videos that fall under these rules. There will be no comment section because the comments will be automatically deleted or something, and nobody can read about it. And I think, again, I think you're starting to see where this can go, because this isn't just about YouTube channels that say sell toys to kids or that are targeted towards kids. Because, like I said at the beginning, the wild card here is machine learning, right? And so machine learning will decide, if you have, let's say, I just mentioned Star Trek and Star Wars. Now, let's be clear here. The bulk of, say, Star Trek's history, okay, which has been around for 40 fucking years, the bulk of it was really targeted more towards adults. That hasn't always been true, but it really has been. And you have a lot of people who have grown up with Star Trek. It's an integral part of their life, such as myself, still love it to death. And, you know, things like Star Trek, a lot of these big franchises, like you really get into knowing these worlds, right? And I know, like, for more modern people, this has happened more with Game of Thrones, and that's part of why I think Game of Thrones is such a weird, I mean, and it's not justified, like it shouldn't be a cultural phenomenon because it's one of the worst shows ever made, but it is a cultural phenomenon whether I like it or not. But part of the reason that it is that is because it's a very fully realized world. Now, science fiction fans that have been around for, you know, decades, we're you know, that's old hat for us, having fully realized worlds. That's part of why we're so into this shit. But Game of Thrones is the first time for a lot of your, you know, normies and everyday people where they finally get to understand what it's like to have a fully realized franchise and world within which, you know, that they can study, you know, really and learn about. And so what happens is when you have these fully realized worlds, even if, say, like, I mean, I can't imagine this ever happening, but I think eventually it will, you know, at some point there's going to be like probably some Game of Thrones like cartoon on Nickelodeon, right? Because why not? You know, because money. You know, it's going to happen. Okay. You know, and the adults who have gotten really into Game of Thrones, even though, you know, it's a steaming pile of shit, even though they've gotten into it, they are going to probably still watch this kids cartoon, right? Now, say that you're such a fan of this, you know, horseshit that you're going to end up, you know, making maybe a podcast about it or something like that. And you're going to talk about the new entry into the franchise canon of Game of Thrones. You're going to talk about it on your YouTube channel, but that show's targeted for kids, right? This cartoon that you're talking about. Now, because it's targeted for kids, guess what? The machine learning for YouTube says, oh, you're a kids channel. Even though you're talking about Game of Thrones, which at least for a good chunk of its life was clearly for adults, right? Just on the uncensored content alone. Even though it's nothing compared to shows like Spartacus, which was actually like a great show. You know, I mean, you know, Game of Thrones is softcore porn compared to that. But regardless, you're going to get labeled a kids channel, even though you're talking about very adult stuff. It just so happens to have a component part of the franchise that has to do with kids. And now you're labeled, and you could have had the most popular show on the fucking channel or on the fucking world, you know, because everybody for some godforsaken reason, or sorry, Satan-forsaken reason, you know, loves Game of Thrones. And just because of that, you know, you're going to lose your ad revenue. You're not going to be able to notify, you know, subscribers when new videos come out. If you built a business and a brand around this, you are fucked because you just suddenly got labeled as a kids channel. Okay, and this is the nature of YouTube, you know, to engage in such overreach. It's the nature of Google. Now, this is insulting for a lot of reasons, but I want to finish reading out this story, so let's go back to it quick here. This doesn't, after the $170 million fine and all the $170 million fine, here we go. This doesn't address Patton's concerns about the blurry line that exists in creators' videos, but she argues it's proof that the government and YouTube are ready to address serious advertising concerns on the platform. Oh, for fuck's sake, don't get the government involved. They can't solve shit. But whatever. Reading on, quote, influencer marketing is a relatively new form of marketing. The research and the law has to catch up with it now. There is now a body of research that is able to guide the FTC in how they should address this, especially this kind of native advertising when it comes to kids. I think that we are absolutely going to see new guidelines from the FTC, end quote. Whether or not that means personalities like Paul, Kaji, or even Jojo Siwa, a popular YouTube creator who often incorporates her own various product lines into her videos, will have to stop is unclear. It's not about limiting all creators from working with advertisers or using their own platforms to promote their own product, Patton said. It's about understanding the difference between an audience who can watch a video and process what someone is saying to trying to sell them something and those who can't. Quote, the FTC would take the position that a reasonable consumer following Kylie Jenner is going to know that's her makeup line when she posts on Instagram, Patton said. And if they know it's her makeup line and she's plugging it, then Kylie Jenner doesn't need to put a disclosure. The issue of when you need a disclosure only arises when the reasonable consumer looking at that isn't going to know it's an ad, end quote. Quote, when it comes to young kids, especially preschoolers, the research says you're not allowed to pitch ads to them in organic fashion because they can't differentiate ads from organic content, end quote. Okay, now, again, this is insulting. That's the end of the story. This is insulting on a billion levels to so many of us. And frankly, I think it's insulting to kids. I'll be the first to tell you. I'll be the first to say, okay, here's my issue. Okay, my issue isn't, it's insane and mind-boggling to me that a 7-year-old, like Ryan Toys Reviews, okay, that's mind-boggling that they are making crazy money off of their own product line. I mean, yeah, sure, they're doing shadow advertising as well with Hardee's and Chuck E. Cheese's and so on. But the idea that, like, this 7-year-old has his own product line? I mean, that's both remarkable and strange, and strange in not a good way. Remarkable in that that's possible today, but like strange, there's just something about it that feels off to me. That, that he has his entire own product line. Holy fuck. Shirley Temple on steroids. But I'm not so worried about that. That's not what rubs me the wrong way about this. What really rubs me the wrong way is that, part of it is that, okay, clearly a 7-year-old can't, and look, I know that there are like 9-year-old entrepreneurs and there's 11-year-old, and they show up on Shark Tank and all this shit. Like, I understand. I'm not dismissing anybody, but let's talk the reality here. Outside of a lemonade stand, okay, like, you're generally not going to have a 7-year-old that has a global toy product line that they know how to schlep and upload. And hey, look, I've been using a computer my whole life. I've been typing on a computer since I was 6. I sure as fuck would never begin to imagine or say to myself that somehow I could have figured out how to, like, splice a professional looking YouTube video, upload it to YouTube and all this stuff, even if I were the smartest 6-year-old in the history of the universe. And I'm not claiming as much, but I'm also not denying it. And so it's a little odd for me that ultimately what's happening here, and I've brought this point up before, ultimately what's happening here is you have adults, I think, really, like, using their child as like a marketing tool. And I think that's really fucked up. And I have a big problem with adults in general. Like, just think about this. Okay, just think about this. What business do adults have? Like how can... I've never really understood how adults make kid content, right? Because are these adults that make... all right, here's an example of a cartoon. Like Jimmy Neutron, right? Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius. That was a fun show on Nickelodeon. It was something that was clearly able to be made for everybody because there's a lot of jokes in that were kind of inside, that were clearly meant for much older audiences than a 7-year-old. Okay. But when it's like that, it makes sense to me because you've made something that appeals to everybody. Unless Nickelodeon or Disney or whoever are hiring people that have not mentally evolved, I don't think a lot of people have mentally evolved outside of the single digits in this world, but you get my point. Unless they're hiring people who still, think like that they're 7 years old or something like that. Like, it just seems a little off that adults make shit for kids. And this is the thing. Entertainment used to be, speaking of, did I mention Star Trek earlier? I did. I've been watching Star Trek since I was as far back as I can remember. I can remember the first time seeing Star Trek the Motion Picture. I was probably barely 6. I have the picture of me. You understand? I have the picture of me, my kindergarten class. And I am wearing, in kindergarten, it was a pajama top. You understand? It was a pajama top, but I didn't care. It was picture day. I was going to wear the best thing I thought I had, even at such a young age. You know what the best thing I thought I had was my Star Trek pajamas. Okay, now I didn't wear the bottom, but I wore the top, and I was like, no, that'll get away as a long sleeve shirt. Just this little guy in kindergarten. You know how old you are in kindergarten, okay? And it had Kirk and Spock on it and the Enterprise across the top because I said, God damn it, I'm going to show the world that I'm a fucking Star Trek fan. Now, Star Trek, the original series, how many... that's it's campy, yes, but is that meant for kids? The fuck it is. Of course it's not meant for kids. I mean, just look at the time slot that it was on, with Friday nights and whatever else, back in the 60s. No, that was clearly targeted for adults. It's an adult show. Okay, now you could say it's a show for everybody, kind of like Batman, the 66 Batman series was, right? Where it was theater of the absurd and everybody could kind of appreciate it, and so on. But that's the thing, is that you can make content that is meant for everybody. And when you do that, I don't think you insult the child by making this, I don't even know what terms to use. I don't want to say mentally handicapped content, but like immature, content, as to where kids used to grow up with stuff that, they had the option where they could watch things that were, say, might have been initially beyond their years. You could consider it that. But basically, you could still take it in. And if your parents were good stewards of you, they could not treat you like an idiot and make you watch Howdy Doody all the time. And they'd say, oh, no, of course, Brian, you can watch Star Trek. You can watch, Star Wars and all this stuff. And don't give me the crap that Star Wars is space wizards meant for kids. No, it's not. No, it is not. That argument's got to die. Now, the concerns around advertising to kids, okay, is the FTC, now they kind of have in the past, and it's always been a back and forth. Is the FTC going to do anything about kids' television shows? Probably not. When, most people know now, since the 80s anyway, that, kids' television shows are really just toy commercials, right? Even I have to realize that for cartoons that I frankly fucking love and have loved since I was a kid and still do. Right? Transformers, Thundercats, real Thundercats, He-Man, go down the goddamn, G.I. Joe, go down the goddamn list. I'm still a fan of all those things. I still watch them regularly. Hell, I'm not the only one. Ellen watches He-Man. And, fuck that if you think it's just for little boys. And here's the rub, is that a lot of times, and this is why, this is the double-edged sword of my concern over adults making content for kids anyway, and because ultimately it is all just about the adults making money. It's not usually about the kids having this, a great upbringing or anything like that. But oftentimes what would happen, especially in the 80s, because it was seen as so lucrative, okay, to basically make these 30-minute to an hour toy commercials for kids, okay, is they would hire some of the best writers, just writers bar none, in humanity. For example, J. Michael Straczynski writing for Captain Power in the 80s, right? And they would get the opportunity because, the studios would just throw money at them, okay, and say, yeah, go ahead and make something. We need to schlep some toys out here. And then you'd get these great writers who would sneak in awesome art, awesome stories that anybody, from the ages of 6 to 60 or however old could appreciate, right? Like go watch Captain Power. It's a fucking, that's heavy shit. And to not dumb it down, even though you could say it's just a kid's toy commercial, that whole thing, to not dumb it down, make it as serious as a heart attack, I think helps kids grow up and mature a bit quicker. That doesn't mean they don't get to have fun in life and not, enjoy the joys of being a child and all this stuff. I mean, we should always continue to enjoy life with a sense of wonder and just pure joy inside, right? Okay, but you don't treat kids like an idiot, and that's part of the problem here, is that a lot of this is really, again, it's insulting to kids. It means that effectively, if these people had their way, we would have never gotten G.I. Joe, Captain Power, He-Man, go down the list of things that people still enjoy to this day, and that have such remarkable staying power. And that's why you have what's that goof's name, Kevin Smith, doing a continuation of He-Man decades later on Netflix, and it's the talk of the town. And part of that is because it wasn't written like kids bullshit. So there's a conversation to be had around adults making content for kids and some other things that I think I don't think I can just have that on my own. But what YouTube's doing goes well beyond that part of the conversation. That's really just part of it. And because really what's happening here is you have channels, okay? I can think of a few that even I check out, like Retroblasting, or how about a big one, Angry Video Game Nerd, even though that probably wouldn't fall under, the machine learning, because Angry Video Game Nerd is like one of the, biggest channels on YouTube, right? Or, Cinemasker is what it's actually called. Okay, but that's dealing with video games. That's retroblasting, like deals with toy restorations, from the 70s and 80s and so on. Even though it does so much more. There's a whole slew of channels out there that are, even though they're family friendly, right? Anybody could watch them. It's probably pretty clear their audience is 18 and up. In fact, it's probably like 38 and up, right? Because it's a lot about nostalgia, a lot about history. I mean, and some of these do it so well that, they're practically documentaries, of the past. And they're great channels, and I enjoy the fuck out of watching them. But they will, because technically what they're dealing with, say like classic G.I. Joe figures or whatever else, or Voltron, because it deals with toys, okay, they are going to probably by, whatever algorithm YouTube sets up, they are going to get lumped in as a channel that is selling to kids, even though it is abundantly clear to anybody that spends 2 seconds on there, it ain't for kids. Okay, or at least it isn't just for kids, and its target audience clearly isn't kids. But the language in YouTube's, because they sent out a statement to basically every creator on YouTube. Okay, they sent out the statement that, laid out what's going to happen here starting January 1st, 2020. Now, how it's going to look in implementation, again, a lot of that is anybody's guess. But they put that out, and the language is so broad that it could effectively shut down thousands of YouTube channels, or not shut them down, but make it to where it's not profitable for them to do that. And this would probably affect, because this mentality on YouTube's part, to think that, there's problems here with this mentality, because it seems like a very 80s mentality where your parents thought, oh, cartoons are for kids. That's why, they got to get schlepped away, or, snuck in as supposedly toy commercials, even though often some of them would end up having some of the best writing in fiction in general, bar none any era. Okay. Like I was talking about earlier, but regardless. Okay. It's going to, this 80s mentality of cartoons are for kids, video games are for kids, toys are for kids, blah, blah, blah. And that is an 80s mentality, because as far as I understand it, and the long running logic, and just about anybody will tell you this in the industry, which is so weird that YouTube's not picking up on this, is that kids don't buy toys anymore. It's the adults that are in the toy lines and the toy aisles and so on. They're the ones buying the latest Stormtrooper Black Edition figure and all of this. It's not kids. Kids are just hopping on a tablet or whatever and going away. Of course, they're clearly not on the YouTube Kids app. And probably the reason there is that the YouTube Kids app has a completely different set of rules as compared to the mainstream YouTube app, which, understand, I think like 70% of the traffic, 71% I think was the number I saw. I could be wrong about this, and I forget which year it was, but it's recent. 71% of YouTube's traffic, so of YouTube viewing, is done via the mobile app, okay? So, but the bulk of the rules for that mobile app are different from the YouTube Kids app or the YouTube Kids site that's set up. Okay, the advertising rules are different. And again, understand, ultimately, and this is where I feel, there's a conversation that has to be had around this, is that you have adults who are, even if you think it's just this, little 7-year-old Ryan Toys review, right? It's really adults that are running it, and they want to make a butt ton of money off of, little Johnny, which, is so exploitative in my opinion, but regardless. Okay, that's what they're going for. So they don't want to be on the YouTube Kids app, because they're not really interested in making great content for kids. If they were, they'd just be trying to copy Star Trek in some form or fashion, because that can speak to anybody, right? No, they're just wanting to make a shit ton of money. And if you can't do the targeted ads, and understand that too, is that, they want to be able to hook the adults, and the adults are usually the ones setting it up for the kid, and the adults don't even, most parents, because there's a lot of laziness here. There's laziness, there's clearly laziness on the parts of parents in that they're not paying enough attention to what their kids are seeing, to where this whole fiasco even became a thing. And this isn't just true for YouTube. One could argue that this was a problem in the 1980s, even when those cartoons were pretty fucking good. Okay? But, parents are so lazy, most parents today, that they don't even want to, you can't even bother them to install another app, the YouTube Kids app. Oh, no. No, we'll just set up little Johnny watching the good old-fashioned, traditional YouTube app. So the YouTube Kids app has failed. One could argue Google is trying to push more people into that, but then the reason YouTube's even a thing is, I think right now, or why it's so wildly popular, and believe me, there's problems with all this, is ultimately because people make a shit ton of money on it. They really do. Either through shadow advertising or hawking their own wares, whatever it ends up being. But ultimately, because of really, and that's really where I put the blame. Okay? I want YouTube to be basically dumb pipes, right? I want it to be, I don't want it to be targeting. I don't want it to, I want it to be as stupid a platform as it can get. Now, there's a little bit of a conversation to have around that. But I want to, say, for kind of closing this part off, ultimately, I blame the parents for this, not even necessarily YouTube. Something to be said about monetary incentive, but ultimately, I blame the parents for not paying enough attention, for being fucking lazy, about all of this. And because of parents being lazy, we all, because look, I don't want to go to YouTube site. I don't want to spend a ton of time on YouTube site. I just want to, when an Angry Video Game Nerd video comes out, I want to know about it. When, Modern Vintage Gaming, I think is the name of it. I really like the breakdowns that he does. I want to know about that. When 8-Bit Guy has a video come out or something like that. But, because those channels are about video gaming. So I don't mind the targeted ads part, that not being there. It doesn't mean anything to me. And half the time I've got an ad blocker on when it comes to the website anyway. So I wouldn't see them as it is. But I'm not going to get notified when they have a new video out. And that's an inconvenience to me. And ultimately it's insulting that, again, due to parents' laziness, YouTube/Google effectively thinks that I'm a child because I care about video games, or I am interested in classic Voltron or Buck Rogers content or all of this other stuff. And fuck you. Fuck you, YouTube. Because, again, and that's part of the problem, is that it's only in recent times, like I was saying earlier, it's only in recent times that there has been this divide, or this very clear divide, I think, of what is, where you have very specific demographics that you're kind of going after. In theaters, it's different, because there now it's all about getting as many asses in seats as possible. But now, because of the amount of channels and everything, this is such a big conversation. But this is a very real problem, and you are paying the price for this. And the other side of this coin, the other problem here, is really the fact of just how much power YouTube has in this space. Okay? And this speaks to a technological problem as well. Why is YouTube the real, you could say there's Vimeo, and you could point at some other things, and sorry, library.io is horseshit, and that's a sinking ship and it's going down in flames. Fuck them. Okay? And I don't care who the hell hears me say that. But Bitcoin, woo! Fuck. You could say that there are people who are trying to, take on YouTube in the video streaming space. And we're not talking about like content providers, more so like Netflix and Hulu. Okay. You could say Twitch is trying to take on YouTube, but Twitch can only do what it does. And it's only been able to really broaden its scope because it has Amazon's money behind them. Okay. Why does YouTube have this very privileged position? Is it because they were first? Yeah, that's kind of it, but that's not exactly it. Okay. I think YouTube would have, here's the thing. Google, understand this. Google had to buy YouTube. They had to, because YouTube couldn't go on its own funding. It couldn't be the monolith that it is now on its own funding. Why? Because video over the internet is an expensive, flawed pain in the ass. Google has been developing new video codecs for as long as they've owned YouTube. And actually, even before then, remember when they had Google Video? Okay, they have been working on so many different codecs to try and basically cheat the lack of speed on the internet. And look, I don't care, what gigabits per second or whatever the fuck that you get. Video over the internet, especially like live video, which is what a lot of people see as the future, right? Because TV was dying until reality TV and live shows like American Idol and so on, came on board, that basically forced people to sit their asses down. Okay, live content is a very important thing, but even beyond that, video is hard. And I've said this many times over the years on Sovryn Tech, is that this strange desire for people to stream video is ultimately what is holding back so many technologies like mesh networking and other things that could actually give people real options and maybe allow for some actual truth and not have everything be beholden to governments, tech giants, whatever authoritarianism is out there, because corporations can fall into that as easily as anything else, as any government. Okay, what ultimately keeps people from having that option? Because, well, fuck, I have to have my Netflix. I have to have YouTube. Without it, I'm fucking, what's the point to life? I mean, I kind of feel like that must be how people think. And that's what keeps them from jumping on alternative technologies. Okay, because nobody realizes how goddamned complex and how much trickery and downright wizardry is going on at Google, at YouTube, just to make all that video actually get uploaded online and be out there for people to stream and for it to work. To say nothing of the live content, which is a whole other animal. Remember when they tried to do the Super Bowl live on Twitter? It fucking crashed the entire internet because it's not meant to handle that. Video is hard. And that's why there's no real competitor to YouTube in the space. Because everybody knows how fucking hard it is. And Google is throwing so much money and development into creating new codecs all the time, and even new hardware to try and make that process just a little more manageable. And let's be clear here, that's all they're really doing, is they are managing this. They don't actually have like a real strong solution. There's a reason that Sony just announced the PlayStation 5. They're throwing a 4K disk drive in that baby. Why? Because they know that the streaming of that kind of content, it's still a major work in progress. In fact, it's arguable whether or not it's ever actually going to work. Like in a practical fashion, to where you could have the 7 to 8 billion people, or however many are going to be in the future, all sitting down, and because the powers that be want this, they want everybody just sitting their asses down and watching that 8K content and just like zombies, right? That's what they want. And so here I am complaining about this whole time and saying how crazy it is that these very broad moves on YouTube's part to try and fit in with these FTC rules that ultimately hurt everyone else. Because YouTube is such a monolith. Okay. You're probably wanting, well, what's the solution? Here's the problem. There isn't one. Nobody can figure this out. Nobody can figure out how to make video over the internet an actual tenable thing. It got so bad. Remember when Netflix was even looking into, and they're still doing it. How do we, we talked about this story about 2-3 months ago. Netflix is they want to figure out like your location. They want all your location data so they can figure out the best way to buffer to you, because again, video is fucking hard. And so ultimately, video over the internet will always be, it has to be, in the present system that we live in, okay, in the present economy that we live in, and I don't even think a future economy can lick this one, okay, it will always have to fall under some kind of conglomerate, under some kind of, it has to fall under something that allows for a massive influx of cash. Massive. You can't solve this, okay? These creators, and I empathize with them, these creators cannot go to some other platform. They can't. What, you tell them all to go to Twitch? Then Twitch is just going to have the same problem, and eventually they're going to run into where they're, some company or organization like Truth in Advertising is going to hit them up, and then the FTC is going to fine Amazon, and even though $170 million is a drop in the bucket for them as well, they're still going to run into the same problems, and they're probably going to have to take the same broad solutions. And if you could say, well, maybe machine learning in the next 20 years will get better at it. No, it won't. We've been getting sold that promise for fucking ever. That eventually these algorithms are going to work. And you want to know how we know that they don't work? Because Zuckerberg fucking... a guy with plenty of money to throw at a problem basically came out and said, because I think they have been trying these algorithms and machine learning and throwing it at things to try and rein in and control these massive platforms like, say, Facebook, which also has Facebook Watch. Again, it would just run into the same problems if you think you can just toss everything up on there. But they can't. They basically came out and this is basically what Zuckerberg said in front of Congress. And for the first time in my life, I think I believe him. They can't control, the misinformation in those videos. He is saying, here it is, machine learning failed. Machine learning doesn't work. And Silicon Valley is learning that very, very quickly because they've been trying it for a long time. And it's just not happening. And so now they got to put out the broad strokes that affects, even if there were a legitimate problem, it's such a broad stroke that it's affecting all kinds of people that it shouldn't even bother with. And it all comes down to, frankly, laziness and also, I want to say, quite a bit of degree of stupidity of the bulk of civilization. But if you want to talk about not being stupid, in fact, making a very smart move, as well as taking advantage of a technology that actually fucking works, unlike streaming video, I want you to check this out. This is a new Sovryn Tech sponsor. I am so honored by this because this is one of those companies that's out there delivering the goods, doing the real deal. I mean, I'm so proud of this. I'm so honored to have them on as a sponsor. And that is Vaultoro. What does that name mean? Well, it's vault, like a vault, and oro, which is Spanish for gold, right? So Vaultoro. And what this is, okay, they were the first, back in 2015, the first ever Bitcoin and gold exchange. They've been around, in the Bitcoin space. I mean, if you've been around since 2015, you've been around forever, baby. You can just go to their website, and it's vaultoro.com. Vaultoro. Vaultoro. Vault and oro.com. Vaultoro.com. Go there. You can open a gold wallet in seconds, and you can just easily trade with cryptos and gold. It far better. I know some people want to think about like Tether, right? No. All the gold in your Vaultoro wallet it's insured, audited, vaulted in Switzerland, and unlike fiat money, gold has increased. You know the deal. Gold has increased in value for the last 20 years. I mean, you're getting the best of both worlds here: Bitcoin and gold. How do you go wrong with that? That's why you want to go to Vaultoro.com. Get zero storage fees for the first 2 months. Okay. They've got so much going on over there. They have an equity crowd campaign, which is now live. It's at Bank to the Future, but you can go to Vaultoro.com and you can find it. There's a different website for that, but just go to Vaultoro.com. You'll see the banner for that. That's a very exciting thing going on that they have set up. You're going to want to be a part of that. And they're going to be adding more crypto pairs and precious metals such as silver, platinum, palladium. I mean, this is an all-in-one package you want to be checking out. Go to Vaultoro.com. If you're a market maker, they got a great deal going there for you as well. No transaction fees, and you just make extra cash off the exchange. You want to jump on this. There's not a listener in the Sovryn Tech audience that can't take advantage of what Vaultoro is offering. Get on it. This is the real deal. You want to talk about honest business, honest advertising, all that? They're making it all happen. And I can't thank them enough for sponsoring Sovryn Tech so that I can get this information out to you. Might have someone on from there very soon. Actually, someone I'm a huge fan of personally and who's a fan of the show to interview him and just have him on to talk about stuff. It's going to be a great time. But I believe in this company. I think you should be jumping on it. I jump on it. Vaultoro.com. 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 And I thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. And I thank them just for fucking existing and for doing something, something good in the world, especially in the crypto space. It's tough. This is, the crypto space, so many scammers. Vaultoro, I can tell you, and they've been around. They are not one of those. Jump on it and you won't be sorry. Now, another technology you might be sorry about, we're going to get to that in a second. Let's take one more break, and we'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. Woo! Hey, if you have a project that needs reliable cryptocurrency data, check out blocktap.io. Blocktap.io is a universal cryptocurrency API. You can get historical prices for Bitcoin and other digital assets that you can use to build charts and do market analysis. Blockchain data is also indexed, so you can get transaction statistics, address balances, and more for Bitcoin and other networks. Blocktap.io is free for personal use, and you don't even need to create an account to access the API. To get started, try some of the example queries on the homepage at blocktap.io. Again, that's blocktap.io, blocktap.io, and we thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. Woo! Let's get back to the show.
HackSec.
It is time for HackSec, where we talk issues of hacking and security. And wow, do we have an explosive statement. We're just talking about Google that whole time. An explosive statement from a Google exec that I can't believe I read, but I did. And we're gonna go to the story from Business Insider here, and we got to cover this. Google exec. Here's the headline. Google exec says Nest owners, which Nest, Stelling breaking in, Nest, right? I mean, the thermostat, and now, Nest is like a whole quote unquote smart home option now, okay? That Google, bought out and now owns, part of Alphabet. Google exec says Nest owners should probably warn their guests that their conversations are being recorded. And this story is just from this past Wednesday. And this is coming out, what's today, October 20th? Yeah, 2019. Here we go. This is from Rick Osterloh. Okay, so Google Nest smart devices are always listening. Their microphones detect loud noises, and cameras track sudden movements in a home and can start automatically recording at any time. Stelling breaking in again. That's like seen as a security feature, or just the way that they have to function to do what they are purported to do. Because of that, Nest owners should probably warn their house guests that they're on camera, according to Google Devices chief Rick Osterloh. When asked by a BBC reporter whether homeowners with Nest have such an obligation, Osterloh said he hadn't considered it. Now, I don't... All right, let's read on. But, quote, this is Rick Osterloh of Google. Head of Chief of Devices. Gosh, I haven't thought about this before in quite this way, Osterloh said. It's quite important for all these technologies to think about all users. We have to consider all stakeholders that might be in proximity, end quote. Now, I don't know if he's saying stakeholders are like basically anybody that buys these things. That'd be an interesting way to think about it, because you are effectively funding, when you buy these products, you are effectively, well, for one thing, you're funding your own surveillance, which is, should bring you a whole ton of pause. If anything, it should make your head explode and make you enraged. But yeah, well, anyway, let's keep going. Osterloh then acceded that warning house guests about Nest devices' recording capabilities is proper etiquette, stating that he already does so. Well, that's interesting. This has never been this has never been brought up during like a 10-4 event from Google or from Amazon or anybody, that this is proper etiquette. And like, if the execs at the company are doing it, don't you think, I don't know, maybe put that on the box or in the nobody reads the instruction manuals. I don't know, maybe, no, and nobody reads the EULAs. Maybe have Google Assistant or Google Home or Alexa or whoever the fuck. Maybe you should have them when they first plug in. Okay, it's proper etiquette for you to warn people that you own me, that you have one of me, whatever that means. And yes, does everybody have a smartphone and thus have Google Assistant or Siri? Well, we'll talk about that in a second too. But let's keep going. Does the, quote, this is from Osterloh, does the owner of a home need to disclose to a guest? I would and do when someone enters into my home. And it's probably something that the products themselves should try to indicate, end quote, he said, which is exactly what I was saying. And was what I thought before I even finished the story when I was reading this earlier this week. And I shared this on Twitter too. But anyway, Nest devices are fitted with an LED light that turns on whenever they're in recording mode. These recordings can't be overridden in the moment, but users can reconfigure their Nest settings to disable all recordings or simply unplug the devices, which, again, if people aren't lazy, or if people are too lazy to fucking install the YouTube Kids app so that maybe, I don't know, their kid isn't exploited, or you're not supporting parents who do exploit their children by making them create YouTube channels and unboxing, which those fucking unboxings, I don't understand it all, but whatever. But do you think that people that lazy are going to bother to unplug these fucking devices? Of course not. Anyway, continuing on. So a Google spokesperson was not immediately available to respond to Business Insider's request for comment. That's where we're reading this from. Google faced backlash from privacy advocates earlier this year when it admitted that its workers were listening to and transcribing some users' voice commands to Google Assistant. Google said the transcriptions were used to improve its voice recognition technology and affected less than 1% of all audio snippets recorded. Google announced expanded Nest features at its annual Devices Expo Tuesday morning, including Nest Aware, a new cloud network that connects Nest devices. The feature will roll out in early 2020. So that's it for that story. I mean, this isn't going to surprise any Sovryn Tech listener at all. I mean, obviously. Okay, but for a Google exec to be so fucking open and honest it's surprising to me. But the funny thing, you know what pisses me off about this? And Business Insider is just as bad about this. Of course, granted, they're just trying to get, clicks and ad impressions and all that anyway. Talk about potentially unethical advertising. But regardless, when I say this, when Alexa first came out, when these voice assistants were ever first a thing, hell, let's go so far back. Years ago, okay, this would have been, Voltoro's been around since 2015. This might be around 2014, 2015, when voice coprocessors were starting to get installed in smartphones. Again, they weren't always there. And these are processors designed to work in a low battery mode that are always on and that could effectively, maybe even like when your device is turned off, still activate Google Assistant. That is the point of a voice coprocessor, is to offload all of that off of the main processor, okay, and have something that just handles voice commands completely and can, be kept in this low power mode. We've talked about this. I talked about this with the Dark Android project, the very first episode of the Dark Android project very first recording that I ever did of that, and I talk about it in my Dark Android book as well. Oh, there I go. I'm schlepping my own wares. Oh, God damn it. No, do it because it'll help you. Okay? Get your hands on that book. I talked about it back then, that when I brought that up, okay, I said, you don't know when this stuff's going to be recording you. It could record you at any time, and you could change all the settings in the world that you want. It could still end up recording you, without you even really realizing it. A little LED is not enough to get your attention. Even if it was flashing bright red, I'm sure people would avoid it because, especially if you live in a city, you just go outside and you're lambasted with lights and who the fuck knows what else. Where do you even have any attention span left? Do you even have the ability to notice anything going on around you? And that's why you like to look through your world through a little 5 or perhaps 5.5, or if you're, an iPhone 11 Max, a 7-inch goddamn screen size of a dick that you just kind of, stare into because you can't handle the everything that's going on around in the world around you. But when I said back then, hey, you should really warn people that these things are always listening, when I even just suggested that they were always listening, which is exactly what Rick Osterloh is saying. The guy, the chief of devices, it's not just some idiot at Google, okay, even though there's plenty of those, but the guy who's chief of devices, the guy who's talking about hawking wares, the guy who's hawking all this shit to you. You'd think he would know exactly what those devices do if he's the fucking chief of them. And he never even thought about the fact that, this could be a very real problem. But most people probably don't even realize this. The hell Google doesn't know that that's going on. So Rick's kind of being a little stupid here too. Okay, but regardless, he knows what they're capable of. He knows what he does and that he considers it good etiquette to fucking tell people when you have a virtual assistant. But, again, when I would say, or when anyone else would say, these things could potentially, you never know when they could be listening, even if they're not technically always listening. You never know when they could be listening, even though, again, the entire purpose of a voice coprocessor in a smartphone is to always listen, even in low power modes, right? When I suggest that, oh, you're a goddamn conspiracy theorist, oh, you privacy junkie, what the fuck is wrong with you? Can't we just have nice things? Blah, 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 blah. That's not really happening. None of that is true. You're insane. Oh, but when Rick Osterloh says that, it's fucking newsworthy. What the hell? What in the goddamn hell? This isn't me saying that like every little technology conspiracy or something is somehow true, okay? But I'm just saying that some of us, some security researchers, like myself, some of us don't open our mouths unless we have a good amount of fucking evidence or it's highly suggestive, and when we tell you something, maybe you should fucking listen. I remember years ago, in fact, when we first reviewed the first Amazon Echo, I remember specifically saying, if you need me to go pull the fucking audio, I will. Okay, I specifically said, I think that you should tell people if you have one of these things. And I got the emails back that people thought that was insane. And how many people were out there saying, oh yeah, well, we put this through, whatever network testing and network surveillance to make sure, okay, well, no, it couldn't possibly be listening at this point and blah, blah, blah. Well, even if that were true then, that wasn't going to be true from here on out. Just because at the time, maybe the Echo wasn't sending every little thing that you said, didn't mean that in the future that wouldn't end up happening. In fact, we talked about recently, Amazon had their big event, right? And we talked about Sidewalk, their new protocol, okay, that takes advantage of basically the frequency range that walkie-talkies use that isn't regulated at all. They create an entire mesh network throughout the city of Los Angeles, okay, with only 700 devices that could communicate with itself. If you think that's not there to not sidewalk, but sidestep data transmission on the internet and allow Amazon to collect even more and allow for the Echo, for Alexa to be listening fucking everywhere, well, I've got a bridge to sell you in China. If you don't think that that's what that's about. What network tools are going to help you when you have a mesh network that's running completely independently, controlled by, a massive company like Amazon? What are you going to do then? Your security goes out the fucking door. Again, it drives me crazy. Security researchers tell you this is going to be a problem or it already is a problem. One or the other. Okay. And then everybody just says, oh, stop. Let us have these fun. Let us have nice things, blah, blah, blah. But then Rick Osterloh says, and then suddenly everybody's like, oh, well, that's news. We should warn somebody. And how did Rick Osterloh not know that this was going on? What kind of asinine stuff is that? The craziest thing is, to this day, I still don't understand. It's bad enough that our smartphones are always listening. Why you would add in some more speakers? And Alexa is basically 7 fucking microphones that you just plug in and leave plugged in and just let it ride. Why you would do that? I don't know. I get the smartphone. There's a lot of, for most people, they see it as a net positive. And so negative things, like the fact that it is literally always listening to you. And Rick Osterloh's point is true for every voice assistant out there. Yes, it is. And that's say nothing of the camera thing, which you warned about that as well. And, trust me, it's not just Nest. Ring is the same way, and they're owned by Amazon. We talked about that. Yeah, that's a problem. But like, why compound it? Why add on? Why make it easier for the surveillance society to keep an eye on you? Okay, you got to have a smartphone. Fine, you got to have a smartphone. Okay, you want to make that argument with me? Okay, do you have a reasonable expectation of privacy if you have a smartphone? Yeah, probably not. But a smartphone, is fortunately such a tiny package, depending on which one you have. But it's something that I think you can kind of mitigate and get out of the way. But no, instead, these people you're wiring your entire house with this shit. You're not going to have any privacy. It's not even possible. You're going to have to burn your house down to have some kind of privacy, and then you don't have walls. Stop calling us insane. Stop calling us crazy when we're telling you. Because you're the crazy one. You're paying for the fucking privilege to get spied upon. You tell me who's nuts. Oh, but it's okay. We're fine. We want to watch Game of Thrones. Gotta watch my YouTube. Okay. You have a great time with that. But when whatever you're doing suddenly ends up, being a problem in a court of law, and it will, baby. Because, we all break 4 laws a day. Well, sooner or later, with the surveillance society just getting more and more precise, well, the powers that be are going to know when. And they're going to know exactly what. And you think they're not going to take you to court over it? Oh, just give it time. Just wait until you're a nuisance enough. And I thought that's why a lot of people say, well, okay, I'm speaking to a very broad amount of people. I know that everybody has different tolerances for this sort of stuff. I understand that. Okay? But I thought a lot of Sovryn Tech listeners enjoyed being rebels. That's why we're into, crypto in all forms, not just blockchain tech and not just, like crypto and like end-to-end communication, end-to-end encrypted communications, all this other stuff. I thought we liked being a thorn in the side to civilization, as we know it, to the surveillance society. Well, maybe not. Anyway, one reason that I don't care to be spied upon is I don't mind letting you know that I use Blue Chew. Woo, Sovryn Tech sponsor. Here we go. I don't mind. Do I want you to necessarily watch me? Well, but maybe there's times where I don't want you to watch me, goddammit. Or know when I'm taking Blue Chew. But take Blue Chew, I do, and I recommend you do as well. If you want to have a good time, because I know most of you don't want the whole world seeing you when you're getting it on in the sack, and you know what I mean, baby. Okay? If you don't, well, don't get an Alexa, but do get Blue Chew. And it's Blue, B-L-U-E, Chew. Okay, C-H-E-W, BlueChew.com. And it's blue because it's the blue pill, and it's chew because it's chewable. In fact, the first chewable has the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis. This is going to make for a hot night that I guarantee you nobody in Amazon could or any listening party could handle. Trust me on that. You're going to want it. BlueChew.com. Now, here's the deal. You don't have to go to a doctor's office. You don't have to do anything. You go right to the website. Go to BlueChew.com. You're going to go through the little process. Okay, it's nice and simple. And if you use the code TECH, T-E-C-H, you're going to get your first order of Blue Chew for only $5 shipping. It's going to be for free, just $5 shipping. Can you beat that? No, you can't beat that. You want it to be discreet? It's going to be discreet. But then think about that a little further, how you want that to be discreet, but then you don't mind if Silicon Valley owns everything that you say or even watches you. I don't know, maybe you're into that too. And if you are, well, then put on a good show with Blue Chew. How about that? BlueChew.com. Use that code TECH, T-E-C-H. Get your first order for free, only $5 shipping. And we thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. Now, speaking of blockchain, actually, we got to get into a little bit of a blockchain story here. And, anyway, why spoil the surprise? We'll get into it right after this break. In 2014, he ran from Miami to San Francisco, raising awareness for Bitcoin and the homeless epidemic in America, and now he's doing it again. Blockchain evangelist and advocate for homeless rights Jason King is running across North America right now, from Miami to Santa Monica, right now. 5 years later, his commitment to promoting blockchain technology and fighting the homeless epidemic in America is stronger than ever. And you can help Jason now by going to blockchainacrossamerica.com. While you're there, donate to Satoshi Forest Sanctuary Incorporated to help the homeless, along with all kinds of other ways you can help. Get involved today. blockchainacrossamerica.com. That's blockchainacrossamerica.com.
This week in blockchain.
So I actually got a request. I got a request to talk about this story that we're going to get into for This Week in Blockchain, where we talk about all kinds of blockchain news. And this has to do with, I'll admit, and you got to be careful when you admit things. Sometimes in this, especially in the crypto space. I'll admit that I used to use Poloniex quite a bit. It was just a very simple interface. It always felt like one of the more trusted exchanges that you could use. But a few years ago, I want to say this is around 2016. Around 2016, so I live in New Hampshire. I still live in New Hampshire. It's kind of funny how many people, I don't know, they seem to ask questions about that. Like, are you still in? Yes, I'm still in New Hampshire. But I travel, but I'm still in New Hampshire. But around 2016, Poloniex stopped serving customers in New Hampshire. So I haven't used Poloniex in a good long while. And then it ended up getting bought out by Circle, which is a company I don't trust at all. Of course, Circle has their mission statement. Originally, Circle was, they wanted to be like the PayPal of Bitcoin. They were trying to take on, even though, I mean, there's an irony in that statement, right? Because Bitcoin already is its own PayPal, effectively, you know, if you want to run with the analogy. That's the beauty of Bitcoin, right? Is that it's the money and the transmitter at the same time, and PayPal is just a transmitter. But regardless, Circle was really trying to compete with Coinbase. That was kind of their initial run. Now, I mean, over the years, that has changed dramatically. They never really went live with the product. And I mean, I think I even signed up for whatever they had counted as a beta that never came out. You know, for how they were trying to compete with Coinbase, because at the time everybody was scared to death that Coinbase was going to become some kind of monopoly. The truth of that is, well, anyway. And Circle was trying to be a competitor with that, but then we found out that Circle was actually talking, you know, with varying banks around the world and organizations that effectively, I think a lot of people would invest in Bitcoin to get away from. And so then Circle kind of became like, whatever, you know, who cared? Because they seem to be playing for the legacy system for a lot of people. And now they're to a point where, well, again, they bought out Poloniex and they were running that for some time. They also have, they operate, or they're behind USD coin, which is a quote unquote stable coin, right? That's really just an ERC20 token based on top of Ethereum. And that, you know, is pegged to the dollar in certain ways. Horrible idea. I mean, it's bad money following bad money, and I'm not even going to get into a conversation around Ethereum, though obviously it's attached to Ethereum. That way it can work within the regulatory environment that certainly Ethereum is attempting to trailblaze all over the world, including in the United States. Now, recently, I want to say this is just a couple days ago, Circle is spinning out Poloniex to be an independent, you know, to be an independent company, and they're not going to own it anymore, more or less. And there is a Asian investor or investment group consortium that is apparently going to, you know, put in, I don't know, 100 million into making Poloniex work and probably be financially viable. And it also will no longer service any customers in the United States. So it will not have running operations in the United States. And that's the deal that we heard. Now, there's details to come on around about this, and I am going to speculate responsibly, but I am going to speculate, okay? And some of this information, some of these theories, other things you can find online as well. They're not necessarily coming from me, but a couple of them might be unique to myself. At least so far. I'm sure. I mean, I don't think that I'm the only one that thinks of this stuff. I'm sure there's other people who think of it independently as well. I mean, it's, you know, like the theory of evolution. Charles Darwin was just one of many people who thought of it independently and just about at the same time, too. So anyway, and nowhere near as any of this stuff as important as that. But Poloniex is such a trusted player in the space that it is, no pun intended, there are ripples, I think. No XRP here, folks, but there are ripples being felt throughout the blockchain space because of it. Okay, because then a lot of people wonder, well, you know, where do I go if I can't use Poloniex in the U.S.? Well, you know, that runs into a problem, and even, you know, VPNs might not necessarily be able to solve that. But as far as, and the great listener on Twitter, and I mean that great listener, you know, said, you got to talk about this. What's the deets? What's going on? And so I'll give you, you know, my thoughts on the situation. And ultimately, I think this is because Circle does not want to handle the regulatory environment around running an exchange in the United States. I think maybe they know, I mean, I feel like that company's so fucking, you know, ass deep in the legacy institute, in government and everything else, and the legacy financial institution. I think they're so into that. They might know ahead of time of things going on, or, they might be coming down the pike, and even if they're possible, you want to take action. I can understand from their perspective. I'm not empathizing with them, but I can understand from their perspective where they want to keep if they just hear whiffs of some kind of regulation coming down, that could be, a real problem for them. They're going to want to get out of it. So they are getting out of that completely. And I think that that's really the reason, is that they just don't want to deal with the regulatory environment. Again, they're running USD coin, which I'm sure they want a lot of people to jump on. Okay. And in fact, part of the issue there is that because they have USD coin, even though that's based on Ethereum, if they were running an exchange and their own coin effectively, I think that does become a very serious concern as far as the regulatory environment goes, because regulations could be very harsh over the fact that, you own the exchange, and one of the traded coins. The interest conflicts there would seem quite obvious. Okay. Now, but that points at perhaps a problem of what's going on. And we don't know the name of this Asian investment group that is going to be running Poloniex, but it's been suggested, even though he has denounced it, that Justin Sun of Tron, that he, the coin Tron, that he is leading this consortium. And that runs into the very real concern over the fact that, okay, well, if he's both running basically, the token of Tron and an exchange, is he going to use one of the most popular exchanges in the world to game the system? And I think it's very, I've seen a lot of different crypto outlets come out and say, hey, Justin Sun, hell, actually Yahoo Finance even came out and said, Justin Sun might be the head of this consortium. And he's admitted that he's invested in this to some degree, but whether or not he's leading it, I guess might be up to debate. But regardless, this is such a crazy situation. But I think it's right of, financial reporters to come out and say, hey, they're not being forthright in saying that there's some kind of conflict of interest here. But I think that's basically what they're suggesting, is that there could be a very real conflict of interest with this, that you have, you both operate. One could argue, who knows what else Justin Sun is involved with beyond Tron. Okay. And that's speculation on my part. I want to be clear on that. Okay. And then again, to operate one of the most popular exchanges, this could be seen as some very scary territory. And I'll be frank, I don't know how much I would trust pricing on Poloniex, at that point. I don't like, this is ironic because in one sense, I don't necessarily want to know the names of, I love the fact that we don't know who Satoshi Nakamoto is, and that we probably never will. And I think that's a great and beautiful and wonderful thing. Okay. Because, Bitcoin just does its business and it works. And, dynamite that we don't know who's behind it, because then, that person could kind of become like a figurehead, and who knows where they would steer this thing that really the market has been beautifully steering for some time. Now, I don't necessarily feel that same way when it comes to things like exchanges and some other institutions, because then you run into the issue of, who's running this, and are they steering, are these prices legit? Like what's going on here? And you could say the market's going to bear that out. And sure, I think that it eventually will, but there would be a time between whether or not Poloniex is, posting legit trading volume and pricing and everything, and when it can get compared to every other exchange out there, to know whether or not Poloniex is full of shit and whether they're pulling stunts. Okay, so there's a concern there. There is a time frame within which you wouldn't know, and somebody could make a fuck ton of money off of you during that time frame, and that's a very real concern. So the Poloniex situation, I mean, not dealing in the U.S., I can understand why that is. As far as concerns around this Asian investment, it has nothing to do with the fact that it's Asian. I don't give two shits about. Well, there is some concern around that, right? Because then all of these trades and all of this data that Poloniex has collected over the years, effectively, if this is based out of China, could be handed over to the Chinese government. How do you feel about your trades now and your data now? And Poloniex has been on top of handing over, you needing to hand over varying identifying information to verify your accounts and so on. That all just became the property of China. And who knows, there might even be some kind of backroom deal going on there. So this isn't comfortable. This isn't cool. This isn't, I mean, I think a lot of people might have initially thought, oh, Poloniex isn't owned by Circle anymore. Great. But this could either be just as bad or potentially even worse that it's not. So you want to be very, very careful with this. Am I going to continue to use Poloniex? Well, I'm based out of the US, so I couldn't anyway. But even if I weren't, yikes. I don't know how much I'd be running to them. So that's just my thoughts on it. That's my take as far as what's going on with Poloniex. The details that we have, you've got them now, and my own opinions on it. Oh boy, I mean, the day when we get real decentralized exchanges, a time that can't come soon enough. If you want to talk about some of this stuff, a great idea. Go to freetalklive.com, Sovryn Tech sponsor, freetalklive.com. They have been on the cusp of what is happening with Bitcoin and blockchain, frankly, since like 2010. I mean, and Bitcoin went to Free Talk Live, if you know what I mean. The developers, everybody, they went there. And also Free Talk Live inspired so many people to get involved with Bitcoin specifically. Man, so if you want to talk about it, that's a place certainly to bring these kinds of concerns and bring this stuff up. freetalklive.com runs 7 nights a week. You're talking about the number 27 talk show in the United States. Your voice is going to get heard out there, and these are important things to discuss. And again, I mean, Bitcoin has such a history. Blockchain has such a history with Free Talk Live. It'd be a great place to go and talk about it. So go to them, freetalklive.com, give it a listen, call in. It's an open phone show, and I thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. I have this movie I've been dying to review for a while. It's called Nude on the Moon. But we're going to have to save that review for the future. I want to thank, again, Vaultoro for, talk about a great company in Bitcoin and blockchain. Thank Vaultoro for coming on as a new sponsor. Very honored by that. But we're going to wrap this baby up. Sovryn Tech will be back next Sunday, and I will see all of you then, and I'll see you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovryn Tech. Go to sovryntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.